When it was originally released back in 2013, The Last of Us captivated me with its gruesome, despairing story, juxtaposed with characters who were so complex and multi-layered. Its story left me with an eerie feeling of hope yet tragedy, an arc that wouldn't really complete itself for another 7 years when The Last of Us Part 2 was released in 2020. In between that time, Naughty Dog has released a PS4 remaster with a higher resolution and frame rate target, but for the most part the same assets can be found on the PS3. This new remake looks to rebuild the game from the ground up for the PS5, complete with new visuals, models, and tweaks to make the gameplay and UI more in line with Part 2. Taking place 20 years after an infectious fungus spreads across the planet, turning the infected into zombie-like creatures, we play as Joel, a withered old man with a history, tasked with the job of escorting a young teenager across the country. The reasons behind the mission are up to you to find out, but the dichotomy between these two characters is as infectious as cordyceps. Joel lived well before the apocalypse, but Ellie on the other hand was born into it. Going to the mall and worrying about crushes was never really a thing for her, just stories she'd read about or hear about through the pop culture that was left behind. Her reality is being confined to wherever the military wants her and avoiding clickers and runners who are after anyone and everyone. The environment has slowly started to take back the world from humanity, and in that destruction, there's this odd sense of beauty. On top of the 12-hour main story, the Left Behind DLC is also included with this package. It's a 2-hour prequel to The Last of Us, taking place a few months before the events of the main game, as it follows Ellie and her friend Riley. In contrast to the main story, Left Behind tells as much of a story of innocence as possible within the world left to ruin. Like the main campaign, it finds beauty in its writing despite the ominous vignette around it. The Last of Us Part 1 is presented in this third-person action view that has you play as Joel. Throughout your journey, you'll come across various iterations of the infected. As cordyceps takes over, the body of those infected gets increasingly deformed. Runners will chase you down, stalkers lurk in the shadows, clickers are blind but are deadly, while a bloater is so far infected that it's a walking mushroom with mushroom armor that shoots spores. How you take on these infected enemies, other enemy humans included, is completely up to you. You can go guns blazing, stealth, or a mix of both. The choice is up to you, but you'll have to choose wisely. Ammo is scarce, resources are hard to come by, and managing all of this is part of the equation. It is the apocalypse after all. As you navigate your way across the country, you'll find resources to craft items and upgrade your weapons. Pieces of information like a gun magazine or a note from a nurse may teach you how to upgrade your weapon or craft a better first aid kit. Crafting anything is done in real time too, so managing when and where is equally as important, as the time it takes to regain your health may equally cost you your life. If you take the stealth approach, you can use an empty bottle or bricks to cause distractions, getting to jump on a group of enemies one by one. The open approach nature to combat was welcoming and riveting. Outside of that combat, you'll come across a lot of cinematic platforming. It's nothing too complex, the occasional very simple puzzle solving to get Ellie across the body of water since she can't swim, or finding an object to climb and reach a faraway ledge. It's simple and approachable, but a little shallow. With this being a remake though, some new additions and improvements have been made. Most notable outside the graphical changes in the new UI are the updates to the AI. Companion AI and enemy AIs respectively have both been updated to match that of the sequel. This means enemies are a bit keener on your actions, and likewise, Ellie is supposed to be a bit better at staying hidden. While the changes are notable, they don't completely fix the issue that the original had, as I continue to have moments where I should have been obviously caught by an enemy multiple times. The improvements are welcome, but aren't a night and day difference as the advertising would lead you to believe. The last major change in gameplay isn't actually a new addition, but rather an omission. The faction multiplayer from the original game has been completely scrapped, a truly unfortunate choice considering how much of a fun surprise that was in the first game. Most likely, Naughty Dog is going to invest those efforts into the already announced multiplayer standalone game, which is understandable. However, not as much when you consider that this remake is losing content and charging even more than both the launch price of the original and the remaster on PS4. With this being a remake for a whole new generation console, it's no shot that the biggest changes are with the visuals. Now there's been a few comparisons released by PlayStation, but I don't think those really do the new visuals justice. I personally didn't think the visuals were too impressive of an upgrade until I actually was playing the game for myself. I can best describe it as the visual upgrade from the Shadow of Colossus HD remaster on PS3 to the PS4 remake. The Last of Us Remastered looks so flat, almost like an emulated HD upgraded PS2 compared to The Last of Us Part 1. Models and environments are so much more textured and have a pattern to them. Character's skin, for example, is more reactive to the environment, whether it's wet skin or roughly torn clothes. Environments have much more plant life, worn down buildings with destructible elements that are more on par with The Last of Us Part 2. One of the more easily apparent changes is with the lighting direction and levels. The atmosphere for most environments have been tweaked to be more intimate and mood setting. The performance work by actors is a lot better represented here too. It's most notable in the eyes and facial expressions during pivotal scenes, but equally, I think the cutscenes are the most challenging things to notice in regards to the upgrades. I think the models look immensely improved in person, but just watching a video online through a compressed YouTube or Twitter stream, I wouldn't really blame you if you think the cutscenes barely look upgraded. Tess is a good example. She comes off as a lot older looking in this version of the game than she did originally, helping to give a bit more context to her relationship with Joel. As far as performance goes, The Last of Us Part 1 offers both a resolution and frame rate mode that lets you target your preference. You can either play at a native 4K resolution with 30 FPS or a 1440p resolution with 60 FPS. Both models have a toggle for the film grain, so if you want a cleaner picture instead of the old cinematic look, you can completely change that too. And if your TV supports it, there's also VRR as well. On top of that, all the accessibility options for the sequel are implemented here, along with the visual filters for once you complete the game. The soundtrack from the original game continues to be used with this remake, and the same goes for the performance capture. Once again, The Last of Us continues to have a chilling and goosebump-inducing soundtrack that carries the withered spirit of the story. Likewise, the performance work across the board continues to send shivers down my spine. I will say the underappreciated audio upgrade is the DualSense support added to some of the audible actions like gunfire and combat. The Last of Us Part 1 is a fantastic continuation of the already masterful creation that the original 2013 game was. How great of an upgrade and the value of those upgrades versus the asking price is another question. The visual upgrades are no doubt impressive and honestly worthwhile in terms of replaying the game. For those playing for the first time, this remake is a great option and honestly the best way to experience the campaign at least. With that said, at its $70 price tag, it's a tall ask for anyone that's already played both the PS3 and the PS4 iterations of this game. If you fit that category or are just cautious of the retail price, I'd say do play this, but wait for a sale. I do think it's worth replaying even the third time, but not so confidently for another $70 on top of it.